This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Caddles.
You are listening to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Caddles, part of the CLNS Media Network. This episode, of course, is brought to you by Prize Picks, the largest daily fantasy sports platform in North America. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code CLNS and get $50 instantly when you play $5. You also want to take the guesswork out of buying tickets with our friends at Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. And finally, eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off and use code Bedard50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Round one in the books, Greg. Will Campbell was the pick. Your reaction?
Yeah. Look, I feel like we've been talking about Will Campbell for months. I'm happy with the pick. I think that it's what the Patriots had to do. It's basically out of desperation. It's not Mike Vrabel's fault that they were in this position. It's Bill Belichick's fault. It's Elliott Wolf's fault for missing the two different runs on tackles last year. And I think that, the key phrase that we heard from Vrabel last night was a foundational piece. Like, they were looking with the fourth overall pick. I'm sure there's plenty of people, and we'll get into it, who, want flash and want this at fourth overall, and really where the Patriots are right now. And, you got to remember, this is a team that has won, I put it in my column last night, but like 10 of their last 41 games. They needed a guy who would address a need and would also be a foundational piece to this rebuild. And I think they got that in Will Campbell. And I also think, Nick, that the way the first round played out, I thought it completely justified the Patriots saying, we're just going to stick and pick the best guy. And remember, there's a lot of different opinions on Will Campbell. I've certainly had them. I've said I don't love him at left tackle. I don't love any of these guys in this draft. But no one will argue he's a damn good football player. And I will tell you that in my discussions with NFL teams, most of them said Will Campbell is the best tackle option in this draft. I know the Raiders at 6 really liked Will Campbell. He was the top of their board on the offensive line. And so when you look at the way, to pass on Will Campbell there and go with, Tyler Warren or Ashton Genty or, whoever you want, like we always talked about, like you can do that, but you better have a path to a tackle. And then guess what happened? They take Will Campbell at 4. Armand Membu goes to 7th to the Jets, where he's going to probably be plugged in at right tackle, which is where I think he should be. Kelvin Banks goes 9th to the Saints, and then it cooled. There were some interior guys that went off the board, including your boy Donovan Jackson, which we were all bummed about. Both of us were certainly bummed. And then right at the end of the first round, you're looking at guys who could play left tackle, and Josh Connerly goes to the Commanders, where they already have Laramie Tunsil, so he's going to be a right tackle / guard. He's going to compete with Brandon Coleman to see which one's outside, which one's inside.
Yep.
And then the Chiefs take Justin Simmons, who I said had the best left tackle film in this class, but there's a lot of risk there with his knee and also with his character. And you can understand the Chiefs could do that. This is sort of like the Patriots in Dynasty 1 or any of their dynasties, because they had that foundation, the leadership, like all that stuff. They could afford to take some risk to get some upside, and good for the Chiefs. But the Patriots are just not at that point. And so Will Campbell becomes the best option available, and I don't disagree with it.
The Josh Simmons, I know you said Justin. He knows it's Josh, people. Trust me.
Damn it. I can't tell you how many times I have to correct that, even when I'm typing. I want to say Justin Simmons.
It's all good. It's all good. We've all been, saying a lot of names and spending a lot of hours talking about this draft and all that stuff. He knows it's Josh Simmons. Josh Simmons, to me, is kind of similar to Dominique Easley when you go back to the Patriots years ago. To highlight your point, Greg, The Patriots were in a different spot. You take a swing at the end of the first round on a Dominic Easley, who has a lot of questions about his knees. Simmons has a big question after the patellar tendon tear and the fact that he has, according to some football character concerns. So if you're Andy Reid and you've got Patrick Mahomes and you've got this championship culture and locker room, and you have 2 starting tackles right now that you would be perfectly fine with starting day one with, there's no rush to get Simmons back on the field from his injury. There's no rush to put him out there when he's not ready. So you build this football character and you work with him physically to make sure he's 100% settled before you put him out there in the deep end. It's a completely different situation. If you draft Josh Simmons here in New England, you're going to walk in wanting him to be your left tackle day one. That is a completely different set of circumstances. Same thing with Josh Connolly, as you mentioned, Greg. Laramie Tunsil's a starting left tackle. He's been one of the best left tackles in football for the past several years. So there's no doubt who's going to start left tackle. And if you put Connolly at right tackle, it's not nearly as big of a deal. And you've got Jaden Daniels, who, had such a good year last year, and Kingsbury, and they have that second-year groove going. Kingsbury decided not to leave if he had the opportunity to leave. So it's a different set of circumstances. Let me ask you this, Greg, because I do want to get to a point that I have as far as whether or not Campbell will work. I got 2 points at left tackle, but I ask you, what is the likelihood that he works at left tackle for this team?
When you say works, does it mean for the balance of his career?
Do you think he's capable of being that guy for the next 8, 9, 10 years?
Is he capable of it? Yes.
Do
I think he's going to do it for 8, 9 years? I would put that percentage for me at about 45%, I think. I think that when we talk about maybe his second contract or the end of his rookie contract, he could kick inside. A lot of it will depend on what the Patriots do, even today, with day 2 of this draft. I mean, if they are dead set on, and I could see it, and we talked about it coming in, I could see them being dead set on, we are effing solving the left side of our line. We are going to get a left guard, a starting caliber left guard in this draft on day 2, and we're just doing the thing now. And I think if they do that, say they get like a Tate Ratledge or somebody like that, then I would up the percentages to say 60%, because I think they go into it and they say, we're come hell or high water, he's our left tackle. Josh McDaniels, you got to deal with it. If he needs help against certain guys, so be it. That's the scenario where I see him being the long-term left tackle. I will say it was interesting to listen to Mike Vrabel last night, and then you compare it to what he said about Peter Skoronski, who he drafted a similar type player to Will Campbell, where when they drafted Skoronski at 11 with the Titans, Vrabel, when he was asked about where he's going to play, he said offensive line. We'll figure the tackle guard thing out later. There was no hesitation with him last night with Campbell. I mean, Mike Giardi asked him point blank, and he said he's a left tackle. So to me, that puts him in a different category than Skoronski. I think it's parsing words a little bit, but I do think it's significant. But also, I mean, I don't think Mike Vrabel's going to go out there and sell the public after taking a player 4th overall instead of 11th overall with Skoronski and say, yeah, we're not really sure where we're going to play him, but, he's a good football player. So I don't know what to make of it, but I took it being in the room last night. I took a little bit of confidence from the way he talked about Will Campbell. And
maybe it's the SEC versus the Big Ten, that comparison between Skoronski and Campbell. Maybe it's just the athleticism. I'm trying to pull up Peter Skoronski's RAS, relative athletic score, to see where he was at, because it's going to kind of dovetail with one of the points that I have regarding Campbell's ability to possibly, play left tackle for the long term. So just pulling up Skoronski. Skoronski was an 8.89 RAS, which is good. I don't think that's nearly as good as Campbell's. I think Campbell was somewhere in the 9 range, wasn't he? I got to check that out. But it's not.
Right.
Yeah, it's not like Skoronski was this supreme athlete. Where when you do look at Will Campbell and his ability, Will Campbell scored a 9.91 RAS.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a different world. That is a different universe. Will Campbell, when you look at his relative athletic score, ranked 15 out of 1,507 tackles from 87 to 2025. So Skoronski, it wasn't just the arm length, it was the athleticism level and maybe even the level of competitor he faced at the Big Ten versus what Campbell did in the SEC, which brings me to this, Greg. Number one, I think everybody, including us, we have done a disservice to Will Campbell when talking about his ability or the probability of him playing left tackle at the NFL, because I think we've paid so much attention to the people that say he can't do it instead of focusing on the people that say that he can do it. I did a lot of research over the past couple of weeks because I didn't just want to go into round one with my ass hanging out of my pants. And I wanted to make sure that, it wasn't like 20-1 people saying, oh, he can't play tackle. What I found out was interesting. The majority, I won't say vast majority because that might be a little bit too hyperbolic. The majority of people, experts, analysts, pundits, execs, coaches, scouts, college level, pro level, the majority, heavy majority, believe this guy can be a tackle at the NFL level on the left side. Mm-hmm. I'll just give you some names. Dane Brugler had him as his number one left tackle, number one offensive tackle. Daniel Jeremiah had him as his number one tackle. Field Yates had him as his number one tackle. Bucky Brooks had him as his number one tackle. Other names like Nick Saban, Todd McShay, Nate Tice. And I can go on and on and on with more names. Last night, Louis Riddick said, I think this guy's a left tackle for the next decade. This was a no-brainer. So I just want to make that clear. The majority of people in football believe this guy's a left tackle in the NFL. And we've paid so much attention to the minority that keeps barking about his arm length, which leads me to this. Athleticism and intangibles. Just mentioned it with Skoronski. Greg, do you think we put way too much on the arm length? And when we look at the history of, and Giardi's done a great job, and you can't mess with the numbers, right? Mike's done a great job, and he had this tweet yesterday about, there's, 5 billion tackles and the wingspan and this and that.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, what you got to look at, Matt Chatham had a long tweet about this, and you should check it out. Anybody out there? No, it was a good one, though. It was a really good tweet because the point was not everybody is the same. So, yes, he has the wingspan that's not good. He's got questionable arm length. But what you got to look at is guys with the short wingspan and arm length, what was their level of athleticism, their football IQ, their work ethic, their level of play in college football, who they played against in college. And we're taking this one metric of arm length and we're putting so much on it when there's a lot of other things about Will Campbell's game and ability that might make him the outlier. You buying that or not?
I am. I mean, I think they are all very valid points by you. I will say for me personally, the only time I was disturbed by his arm length was when the combine measurement came out, and it was a lot closer to 32.5 than it was the 33, and that spooked me. But now we know that the combine numbers were bubkiss, that I think it's either 32 7/8 or 33 inches for Will Campbell. And at that point, I was fine with it. I will say, and it's all legitimate, and you could be 100% right. I just think I'm more of a film guy. I've watched the film.
Right.
I don't think the film is as clean as people make it out to be. For example, I heard Phil Perry talking last night, and he was talking about his film against Jared Verse. I watched that film. It was good. Some of it was really good. There are also some reps that are really questionable where if if Jaden Daniels held the ball longer, if there wasn't a bubble screen on the play, there would have been issues. And so that his film is littered with that against the top guys that he went against. So really, when I talk about what gives me pause, it's that stuff that gives me pause. It's not his arm length. Like, I have all the confidence in the world, and I do think it's completely valid that Will, with his mind, his compete, his attitude, his physical attributes, I do think he has a better chance than a lot of others, probably 95% of them, to be the outlier. And again, combining that with Josh McDaniels and Doug Marrone and all that, there are ways around it if he is limited. But my thing that gave me pause was some of his film. And people can throw, I'm not a big testing score guy. I'm not a big PFF guy. Like I said, some of those reps, like you might say 18 pressures or whatever sacks he gave up. But you look at the film, and there are a lot of plays that if a different play call was called, or he was in more of a pro-style Josh McDaniels offense where there's more, drop back and play action and all that, like I was worried that it's going to be an issue. And that's why I can't 100% write him down as a left tackle. I mean, I'm certainly going in with an open mind, and I'm optimistic because of the player that he is and his character, his football character. But I can't sit here and just sell that he is the left tackle for the next 10 years, because there's too much in the film that gives me pause.
I want to be clear. I'm not guaranteeing it either. I'm just trying to be fair to the player, and I'm also trying to be fair to the listeners and viewers of this specific podcast that we do here, because I do think it's been, there's been so much emphasis on the negative in the arm length, he can't do it, that I just think it's fair to everybody involved that we also give the other side of that, which actually is the more popular side of it, given how many people believe he can be a tackle. I don't know. I've said this. I don't know what I don't know. I'm not an offensive line guru. I can't break down offensive line film like you, Greg. He might end up being a guard. I really like the pick. I don't love the pick at 4, but I really like it. I can grow to love it. If he proves himself to be a tackle, I think it's going to be a home run. But I just want to make it clear. I'm not saying that it's a guarantee. I just wanted to represent the other side, which is a sizable side to this argument that has been, I think, underrepresented by all of us in the media over the past couple of months. All right, we got a lot more on the draft. But first, Greg wants to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks.
The NBA playoffs are here, and to really experience it, to really get it, what the Celtics are going to do again, you got to get there in person. You got to be there for all the sights, sounds, smells. Some of the people sitting next to you might not want to smell, but you got to be there to unlock all your sensories. And the best place to do that is Game Time. Game Time makes getting tickets faster and easier, even for hard-to-get playoff seats. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to tip-off, with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying NBA playoff tickets. I love the all-in pricing. Seat views are a must. They have last-minute deals, so you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. Whatever you want to go to, they got it. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game Time.
Another reason why I really like the pick, and we could sit here and I think we've talked so much about Will Campbell, and we've talked a lot about the good with Will Campbell. I mean, the guy just checks, as they say, so many boxes. It's a cliche saying, but it's the easiest way to put it. He checks so many boxes for this football team. And at a certain point, the way I put it is, Greg, you got to take your medicine. And the Patriots did not take their medicine at left tackle for way too freaking long. So I'm not going to sit here and bitch about this team not having a left tackle prospect, somebody who could be a legit guy on that side for the next decade for their young quarterback. I'm not going to be the guy that bitches about that. And then if they draft the guy at 4, I'm going to bitch about, oh, that was too high. They could, but I'm just not going to do that. But also the circumstances. I mean, Carter was off the board. We know what happened with Cleveland, and maybe we'll get to that a little bit later, but my goodness. Travis Hunter's off the board at 2. Mike Vrabel said, Mike, like I'm his best friend. Vrabel said last night that they didn't get a single offer for the 4th pick. So no Carter, no Hunter, no trade down option. The reality, I think, is they did the best they could do. Am I wrong?
No, you're not wrong. I agree with what they did. And, I wrote this in my column last night, and, let's go through a little podcast exercise. And this is the point I made. And to me, this is the bottom line. And I said, raise your hand if you're infuriated by the offensive line over the last couple seasons. I think just about everybody would raise their hands. I mean, how many times were people bitching and moaning, including a lot of sports talk radio hosts, about lamenting the state of the Patriots offensive line, and Fedarian Lowe and Dimitri Jacobs and Slappy 1 and Slappy 2 and Slappy 3 being out there. Okay. So now we all agree on that. The Patriots sucked on the offensive line for more than a couple years. If you didn't use the 4th overall selection on a tackle, how were you going to do that? Trade back in the 1st round? Okay, I see a lot of hands. Wait until the 38th pick? I see a few hands. I don't mind the sentiment one bit, but when your team picks 4th overall, I know you want some instant impact, pizzazz, all that stuff. Understandable. It's also fantasy land. It's not reality. We know how they got into this mess. So those of you who said trade up or 38, after where they've been, really the way the 1st round played out and what's left, like you were just gonna continue the cycle of suck that's gone on here. Like there was way too much risk, and we talked about this going in, and that's why I was okay and with them picking Will Campbell, which I thought they were going to do. And like they couldn't afford to do that. And finally, like we talked about when he got hired, the adults are back in the room. Mike Vrabel was an adult and said, I'm stopping this. I'm not chancing it. I'm not taking somebody else. And then now I got to trade up into the bottom of the 1st round for Josh Connerly, who I don't think is a left tackle, might be more of a guard, probably a right tackle, or Josh Simmons with all his red flag. Like, I'm not doing that. You're chancing it again. You're in the same place. Will Campbell gives you the ability to stop the suck, at least temporarily, at the very bottom, temporarily for a season or 2 until you figure things out even more. But I am glad that Mike Vrabel said, I'm done with this. And if they did it again in round 2 or 3 with a guard, a center, a right tackle, whatever, if they do it again, I'll be just fine with it, because the madness has to stop. And all these people who are criticizing the pick, like they're just contradicting themselves where they were in the fall. I don't know if they have amnesia or what, but almost all of these people who are complaining about the pick have complained about the offensive line for years on end, days after days, and now Mike Vrabel stops it, and now they say, well, it wasn't good enough. Like, what do you want him to do? Yeah, I'm glad Mike Vrabel's the adult. He's in the room. He stopped it, at least temporarily. Hallelujah. They might actually have a real offense this year.
It's just, it's disingenuous to me to not have an answer to the question of, well, what would you have done if you didn't pick Campbell at 4? And listen, I'm not going to sit here and shit on everybody, because everybody has their opinions. That's fine. I've been wrong plenty of times. I'll be wrong plenty of times moving forward. And I'm fine with egg on the face. It's cool. But there was this one column. I was getting ready to do the midday show yesterday with Beadle and Phil. And Tom Morgan, the producer, had sent this Boston Globe column. And I'm upset that we didn't get to talk about it on yesterday's show, because the thing pissed me off. Because in this column, it was, what should the Patriots do? What will the Patriots do? And everybody, I think everybody was like, oh, well, the Patriots should either move down, trade down, and then get somebody else and pick somebody else. Or they should take, Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter if he's there. And I'm like, realistically, and they were criticizing the Patriots before the draft because, they're just going to take Will Campbell when they should trade down. What if you can't trade down? Right. It's always a great scenario. What if you don't get a phone call? Like Vrabel said, they didn't get a single offer. So yeah, they should trade down. It would be great if they could trade down and still get Banks or Campbell later down in the top 10. Would have been awesome. But if that option is not realistic, what do? You've got to deal with reality. And we drop these fantasy scenarios all the time. Simple question, Greg. Is there an offensive tackle in this draft that you would have taken over Will Campbell?
Nope. Not that I would have felt better about. I think, really for me, it was at the end of the day, it was Will Campbell. And I think Ursery, and depending on how he checked out character-wise, Josh Simmons. That, to me, that was it. That was the sum total of guys that I could project that I could see them having a better than 50-50 chance of starting at left tackle in this league. And that's why I came down at the end of the day where just take Campbell, get it over with, and move forward. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. Run your game all season long on Prize Picks. You got the playoffs are going, hockey and basketball. It's the perfect time to get in on the app. Love the app, easy to use, and root for your picks. It's a lot of fun. You got to get in the game. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. The app is really easy to use. To create a lineup, all you do is pick more or less on a few player stats for your shot to win up to 1,000 times your money. Like I said, the playoffs are here. Action is heating up. The best place to cash in on your favorite sports is at Prize Picks. Don't miss your chance to cash in as the league's best fight for conference and league titles. Download the app today and use code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, that's code CLNS to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game.
For those listening, by the way, we asked you that you could subscribe to the podcast, please, like and leave a review. And for those who are watching the show on CLNS, go ahead and hit that like button. Subscribe to the Patriots Press Pass YouTube channel where you can find our show and a lot of other great Patriots content. And also, please make sure to turn on your notifications so you know when the big boy is about to drop a new video. All right, Greg. Did the Patriots, in your estimation, make a mistake by not being more aggressive and trying to get into the first round via trade last night?
No, I'm just going back to I'm just looking at the bottom of the first round. So, to me, with some of the, discussions that we had leading into the draft, some of the guys that if they happen to fall that I really liked, unfortunately, a lot of them went. Gray Zabel went 18th to the Seahawks.
Yeah.
If he was available in the bottom, he was a guy I'd trade up for. Amika Igbuka from Ohio State, the wide receiver. I thought there was a chance he might fall.
Tampa, are you serious, by the way? So you signed Chris Godwin, you dinks, and then you got Mike Evans from last year. You draft McMillan from Washington, and now you're also going to use a first-round pick on Igbuka? Jason Light, get out of my face.
Yes. And also, the Vikings probably you don't like them very much because 24 with the Vikings, because I want to say they have a limited amount of draft picks in this. It's like
four.
Five.
They had four going into last night. Yeah.
4. So 24 was one of those you figured they'd look to trade down, and the Patriots might be able to trade up if they really wanted to. And one of the guys that we wanted, that we targeted, Donovan Jackson, they stuck and picked him. Which is a really good move by them.
Yep.
Unfortunately, Yeah, I bet teams were calling for him in that spot, but they stopped and picked him. I would not have traded up for. I like the Ravens pick of Malachi Starks, the safety out of Georgia. Josh Connerly Jr. to the Commanders. That was another trade down. That I think that was a smart pick. I mean, you talk about where the Patriots are trying to build things for Drake May, but again, they're a year behind the curve where, last year they signed a bunch of free agents. They draft Brandon Coleman, who started at left tackle for them. Now he's going to be competing for Connolly with right tackle. The loser moves inside. Really good job by the Commanders doing exactly what we want them to do for Drake May. It's just the Patriots, as we've documented, were way behind the curve. And then, Jihad Campbell to the Eagles, a great pick again by Howie. He's just knocking it out of the park, like just moving up like one spot. He was the guy.
It's so sick.
And Josh Simmons, I'm sorry if Mike Vrabel, being an Ohio State guy, I'm sure he has great contacts there. He coached there at one point. Like if he was okay with Josh Simmons and all that comes with him, I'm sure they would have entertained we're going to pass on Will Campbell. We're going to draft something else, and then we're going to go get Josh Simmons at the end of the first round. And that didn't happen. So no, none of the scenarios that I thought where maybe they could trade up to say 24 and steal one of my favorite players. It just didn't happen. They weren't there.
There were a lot of teams reportedly that were ready to trade out of the 20s to go back down on the draft board and get into the second round or even later in the first round. But that's pre-draft stuff. I always wonder, like, you don't know how the board is going to unfold. You don't know who's getting picked, when, where. And so, for example, there was a lot of talk about Green Bay trading out of the first round. They had the 23rd pick. Well, did the Packers feel like Matthew Golden was going to be available to them at 23? And as he starts to fall down the board, their urgency or desire to trade that pick might wane because they might like, hold on, wait a minute. We had Matthew Golden as a top 20 pick. If he falls us to 23, we don't want to trade that pick. We'd rather pick the player. So you always kind of wonder about, did Minnesota know that Donovan Jackson was going to be there at 24? Did they need a certain amount, in return to move out of that pick because they love Jackson? So you just don't know the evaluations from each team for every player and which guys they're targeting. And it might be a situation of they're trying to move down if that guy's not there or if those guys are not there. Second thing I would say is, the trades that were made last night, heavy prices, the third trades and the three trades late in the first round. So the Giants gave up a second, a compensatory third, and a third round pick next year to deal with Nick Caserio and the Texans. And I think they overpaid because they were moving up for a quarterback and they just wanted Jackson Dart. And then the Falcons trade, my goodness. Trading a 2026 first round pick to pick at 26 to pick a pass rusher, James Pierce, who has some questions off the field, but they
a lot of questions off the field.
Yeah, and serious. You can Google it. Some serious allegations about Pierce. So they moved back. They give up a first round pick in 2026 to go along with a second this year to move in to 26 to draft a pass rusher after they spent the 15th pick on Jalen Walker, a pass rusher. So that was a huge overpay. And then the only other trade that happened was the Eagles and Chiefs. And look, the Chiefs are not moving down to 38. The Chiefs wanted a left tackle out of the first round. They obviously had the conversation with Howie Roseman. And unlike Elliott Wolf with the Chargers last year, they probably got an answer as far as offense or defense. And Howie Roseman said, no, we want to move up for Campbell. And they said, okay, that's fine. We'll move back to 32. We'll get a lottery ticket pick later on because we know we're going to get Josh Simmons at 32 instead of 31. So you could not really work that deal out with Kansas City because I do not think they'd be willing to fall all the way back to 38 and possibly lose out on Simmons. All right. Day 2 talk. Let's get to it. Going into tonight, Greg, what would your plan be if you were Mike Vrabel?
Well, Nick, I was just looking at my
Don't give me players. Don't give me players.
Okay. Yeah.
I'll ask you about specific players next, but I just want the generalized plan and approach.
Okay, so I'm just saying. I was just going to say, looking at my depth chart, the Patriots now to basically fill out their starting lineup for next season, or at least people who are going to play a lot. I now have, after Will Campbell was number 1 on my needs list, Milton Williams was number 2, left guard, wide receiver 1, potential wide receiver 1, X receiver, and then you have pass running back, and of course a kicker. So I don't know if I'm Mike Vrabel, and it sure seems like they're being very they're going step by step with this thing and talking about competing and all that stuff and being able to, first we need not to lose and all that stuff. I think that left guard, wide receiver, and an explosive running back in the pass game, those would be my 3 top needs going into today, and I wouldn't be shocked if they checked off all of them.
All right. We're going to get to some names from Greg. We're going to talk about maybe some targets here. Day 2 tonight. They've got 3 picks, 38, 69, 77. We'll get to that, but first, what's up with Factor Meals?
Ready to optimize your nutrition this year? Factor has chef-made gourmet meals that make eating well easy. They're dietitian approved and ready to heat and eat in 2 minutes, so you can fuel right and feel great no matter what life throws at you. Factor arrives fresh and fully prepared, perfect for any active, busy lifestyle. Lose up to 8 pounds in 8 weeks with Factor Keto meals based on randomized controlled clinical trial with Factor Keto. Results will vary depending on diet and exercise, with 40 options across 8 dietary preferences on the menu each week. It's easy to pick meals tailored to your goals. Choose from preferences like Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, or Keto. That's the one I get. Factor can help you feel your best all day long with wholesome smoothies, breakfast, grab-and-go snacks, and more add-ons. Reach your goals this year with ingredients you can trust and convenience that can't be beat. I'm telling you, this stuff, I know you probably have in your mind, diet food, what have you, like it probably doesn't taste that great. Trust me. Factor, the seasoning, the sauces, like all that stuff is off the charts, and it comes right to your door, packed great. Can't say enough about them. Eat smart with Factor. Get started at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off and use code Bedard50 off to get 50% off your first box plus free shipping. That's code Bedard50 off at factormeals.com/Bedard50 off to get 50% off plus free shipping on your first box.
Give me some names, Greg. Favorite targets, guys that jump out at you that if you're Mike Vrabel, you feel pretty good about drafting tonight.
Okay, so let's deal with the positions that we talked about, first and foremost. So at wide receiver, of course, you have the 2 Iowa State kids, Jalen Knoll, who is more of a speedy slot type. Do the Patriots go there, considering they already have Pop Douglas? I mean, it's possible. I would tend to doubt it. I would say Jaden Higgins is a bigger, more of a boundary type of guy. I could definitely see that. If you're looking, a couple other guys that I think are more of possession but tough, will play earlier, don't have that much of a learning curve. I would say Jack Besh from TCU.
Yeah.
Really good player. If you want it, I would say that. Who is the guy that they passed on that went to the Chargers? Lad McConkey. McConkey's like a little bit more explosive, but he's in that, sort of McConkey, Puka Nacua, that type of player. Alec Amenor from Stanford.
Stanford, yeah.
He is big, physical, blocks his ass off, ate up Travis Hunter in their matchup. I think it was like 2 years ago. One of the guys that I would look for upside, depending on, how much you liked him. I really liked him. He was near top of my wish list. Kyle Williams from Washington State.
Yep.
He's not as big as you might like, and there's some concerns about how much he's really going to get open in the pros, but I see explosiveness. I think he can get open. I think he's a really good player. At running back, of course, you have Travion Henderson from Ohio State, the Tootin kid from Virginia Tech. If you want speed, if you want that, he has that in spades. My personal favorite, RJ Harvey from UCF, could be out there. Offensive line, of course, if you wanted to double dip at tackle, Arante Ursary is still there. One of my guys that I think could play left tackle, and you draft him, and maybe it doesn't work out with Campbell at left tackle at some point, but it does for Ursary. You know, who really cares? Charles Grant from William and Mary. He's going to need he's not going to be an instant impact guy. No. He's going to need to be brought along. He's more of a project, but I see him as more of a guard. Dude has a big old butt, which I love in the run game. But could be that tackle guard versatility that you're talking about. Of course, Ozzie Trapillo from BC. If you're just like, we're getting bookend tackles, Campbell's our left. Ozzie Trapillo, to me, is an easy plug and play guy. Once Moses is done, maybe Trapillo's really tall. I don't know if he can play guard or not, but that's possible. Interior offensive line, Marcus Mimbo from Purdue, Wyatt Milliam from West Virginia. To me, I think him and Will Campbell would be brothers from another mother. Like they're very similar. Milliam is, another tall tackle type, but tackle, guard, versatility. Tate Ratledge, I talked about. Really love him from Georgia as a plug-and-play left guard. And then if you're looking for a center, Jared Wilson from Georgia. I also wanted to mention a couple other guys. Mason Taylor and Elijah Arroyo at tight end. Yep. Love those guys. There's a lot of edge guys there from Ezeraku from BC, Scorton from Texas A&M, Landon Jackson, who gave Will Campbell a devil of a time on film. Who else stood out to me? Darius Alexander, DT from Toledo. Yep. Carson Schweschinger, the linebacker from UCLA, total Mike Vrabel type. The safety, Nick Emery from South Carolina. That dude is a physical freak.
Yeah, athleticism off the charts.
And that's sort of my list. I don't know if you have any other names.
I think you nailed a lot of them. You could look at Luther Burden at wide receiver is an interesting guy. You go back to 2023. He's really, really hot. Last year, down year for him. Some questions about how he handled himself comportment-wise on the sidelines and all that stuff. But a talented guy. Before the college football season, a lot of people would have said that Luther Burden could be the first wide receiver off the board. So he's still there. We always say this, but I honestly feel this way this year. And we back this up by what we have said leading into this draft. This is not hindsight. This is not revisionist history. The word on this draft, and we've been talking about it for months, is that day 2 is actually the really fun night in this draft because there are a number of players that are on the board that are starter quality guys. I mean, Greg just ran through, 20, 25 guys who are, you could have argued a lot of those dudes could have gone in the first round in the back half. So this year, particularly, like Ezeraku is fascinating to me. That guy could end up being a stud if he's with the right coaching staff. So there's a number of guys. Travion Henderson could end up being one of the best backs in the league by year 2. So there is a lot of talent. I know we say that, people think we always say, there's a lot, but no, this draft, like last night I was sitting there going, wait, this guy fell, that guy fell. I mean, Will Johnson from Michigan, granted, this isn't about the Patriots. This is the bigger picture here. He has injury questions. Okay. And he's got some speed questions, but Will Johnson, if you watch him play, Michigan cornerback, if you watch him play, he's freaking good. And if he's not injured, I think he probably goes in the first round. So Will Johnson's there. Mike Green. Now, similarly to James Pierce, there are some significant allegations with Mike Green. People thought that he might get drafted in the top 15 of this draft. Obviously, that did not happen. Is that because of the character stuff? but there's a lot of talent on this board. There really is a lot of talent left. And the Patriots with 3 picks tonight, they could do some damage. Quick hits.
Nick, one thing I wanted to bring up.
Sure.
If now that he's in the building right now, and they might have done this already with Will Campbell, and considering how smart he is and how he's like a coach and his recall, if I was the front office of the Patriots, I would be mining him for information right now on all of these guys, especially a lot of the defensive players that are going to go in the next 2 rounds are guys that Will Campbell has gone against, or at least, and he's so smart, he probably know, even if he's not matching up with a guy, or if it's a defensive tackle, like he knows the scouting report, all that stuff, and including one of his best friends is Jack Besh, the TCU wide receiver who used to be at LSU. Like if I'm getting Will Campbell involved, he's going to be like assistant GM today if I were in the building.
Drake, May, and Campbell are in the war room with everybody.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right, this is what we should do. I did think it was fascinating. There's a lot of talk last night about how Drake May was involved in this process. The Patriots let him know about Campbell, let him know how they felt about Campbell, kind of what the plan was most likely going to be. Interesting stuff. Some stroke maybe from the young quarterback getting involved in those conversations. All right, just a quick 3 questions for you. Well, maybe 2 questions, and I got more of a statement. I just got to get it off my chest.
Okay.
The Cleveland trade. What'd you make of that? Well, let me ask you this. Yeah. Did you feel differently about that Cleveland trade after the 5th pick was Mason Graham?
I would say yes. I was kind of surprised they didn't trade down again. Maybe nobody wanted to come up. I like Mason Graham. I'll just say this. It just seems like between the Browns and the Rams, both of those teams obviously looked at the quarterbacks in this draft and they were like, no. But they like next year's. And I hear the Rams are trying to really stockpile for Arch Manning. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But that was my impression, is that they did not like the quarterbacks. I don't know if you're the Browns. I don't know how you'd pass on Travis Hunter and then take Mason Graham at 5. I would hate to be a Browns fan, just like, for the past 50 years.
Even like Genty, if you say no to Hunter, you could get maybe you go with Genty there. You're like, all right, so you didn't get the best overall player, but you got who many people think is the 3rd best overall player, and you stockpiled a 1st-round pick for next year, which I do think I agree with you, which makes me believe they're not going to draft Shedeur Sanders tonight. Because if the theory is that they got a 1st-round pick last night for next year's draft because of the quarterback class, then why in the hell would you draft Sanders tonight at the top of the 2nd round? So interesting stuff. I did think I had 2 moments of being infuriated last night. The first one was seeing that Cleveland trade and saying to myself, holy shit, if the Patriots had the 1st pick of the draft, what kind of haul could they have gotten for Cam Ward, who was the only quarterback in this class that people thought was worth a damn? If that's the package that Cleveland got for Travis Hunter, that pissed me off. And then Donovan Jackson pissed me off later on. Shedeur Sanders, are you surprised he's still there?
Yeah, I am. I think he was certainly in this class, I think he was a 1st-round quarterback. I mean, the Jackson Dart thing that the Giants traded up and took him instead of Shedeur. I mean, look, I could definitely see Dayball liking Jackson Dart a bit more. I mean, I don't know. I see more of like it's Daniel Jones like all over again with Jackson Dart, and plus I thought he looked like a doofus in his draft video. I mean, I don't know what was going on with his hair, like what kind of like mullet that was, and then he had the Felger glasses on as well. Like I didn't know what was going on there, and so, but yeah, I think Shedeur's, and I'm not going to be one of these guys who laments and cries about anonymous sources and they're hurting the draft picks and blah, blah, blah. It's, it's just professional football. Like, grow the F up. Like, just because teams shouldn't be, if teams are making their decisions off of anonymous sources from people, they should not be in the National Football League. Like, do your own homework, grade the film, and then make the pick. So I think a lot of this stuff is complete BS. But yeah, I thought, I don't feel bad for Shedeur Sanders, but I'm surprised that somebody didn't take him at the bottom of the first just to get the 5 years.
I want to go out and buy the biggest box of tissues for two people. Josina Anderson, my God, with the tweets. She has, I don't know how many posts over the past 2 weeks about Shedeur Sanders and how, this quote. It's funny. There's also like good quotes about Shedeur, but again, we're just going to focus on the other quotes. She needs a box of tissues. And my guy Mel Kiper. I know, Greg, that you were at Gillette last night, so you did not have the unfortunate experience of watching ESPN last night. I worked for the network. I don't know if part of the reason why I no longer work for the network is because I've been publicly critical of them. Maybe has something to do with it. But last night was insufferable. I thought their presentation sucked, and they were so ridiculous with the Shedeur Sanders stuff, from building this fake tension for 30, 45 minutes. It was just, and every time somebody got picked, Mel Kiper was pissed, screaming and pounding on the table that Sanders should have gone. And it's like, Mel, I understand that you've got a point, you've got a take, and you're planting your flag on the mountain of Shedeur Sanders. I get it. I do get it. And hitting that a couple of times is absolutely necessary during the draft coverage. But when guys are getting picked and you're turning it in, you're turning it around and you're making it about you and your, evaluation of Shedeur Sanders, instead of talking about the guy who was just picked and maybe allowing some grace for the young man who just got drafted and was able to accomplish a dream. It was just incessant from Mel last night, where it was every other minute, Shedeur Sanders. It was over the top. And it got so bad, Greg, that at one point when the Giants traded back into the first round, and here's a little peek behind the curtain, folks. A lot of the time, most of the time, they know who's getting picked. Okay, it's in their ear. Okay, the league knows who's getting picked before the pick goes on TV, and a lot of times that word gets to whoever is hosting, like Greeny. For a decent amount of picks, they have a pretty good idea who's going. And just this ridiculous, we're going to show Shedeur Sanders when the Giants trade in. So they show Shedeur Sanders. He's not talking to anybody. Nothing's happening. It's Shedeur is standing there watching the draft. And then they go to Jackson Dart. And Jackson Dart's walking around, shaking hands, kissing babies, slapping asses. It's obvious to everybody watching that Jackson Dart's getting picked by the New York Giants. But going to commercial, Greeny's got to be like, is Shedeur Sanders going to go? Is this his moment? And I'm like, no. We just saw Jackson Dart getting congratulated by his family and his agent. It's obvious he's the one that's getting picked. Why do you? It drove me crazy. Drove me nuts. Last one for you. Any surprises tonight, Greg, from the Patriots?
Oh, any surprises? No. Again, I think it's there's a better chance of them sticking and picking in all three of their spots. I mean, I think if I had to vote, my surprising move from the Patriots would be maybe trading down one of their third-round picks, but that's just a guess.
All right, let's get out of here. This has been a long one, but I think this is, honestly, I know I'm biased, but I think this is one of our best podcasts in a while. So hopefully you enjoyed it. We will be back early next week to recap the draft in its entirety. Did we love it? Did we hate it? Did we like it? You'll find out next week. I also want to let you know that $50, Boston Sports Journal for the year, Bedard, Giardi, Corrales, Haggerty, everybody else over there doing great work. Prize Picks, download their app today. CLNS, get $50 instantly when you play $5 using that code. And Game Time, use code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Bye-bye.